The night smelled of rain and regret. Miles Turner crouched behind a parked car, his hoodie soaked through, his hands trembling as he adjusted the torn leather gloves. The house across the street glowed softly through drawn curtains, a warm amber light, the kind that belonged to families who still believed in safety. It was 2:14 a.m. in a quiet Arizona suburb, a place where wind chimes swayed on porches and parents tucked their kids into bed before locking the doors that were never really meant to keep danger out. Miles had been watching this house for 3 days. He wasn't proud of it, but pride had stopped feeding him a long time ago. Welcome to Shadows of Justice, where crime meets compassion. If you are new here, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share. For returning viewers, thanks for sticking to the channel. He slipped in through the back door. The lock gave way with barely a sound. Inside, the world felt smaller, quieter. The hum of a refrigerator, the faint tick of a wall clock, the distant sound of thunder rolling across the desert sky. Miles moved fast, checking drawers and cabinets. He was looking for cash, jewelry, anything that could be traded for enough money to keep him from sleeping in his car another night. But then he froze. A soft whimper echoed from down the hall. He turned toward it, heart pounding, every instinct screaming to leave. But curiosity, or maybe guilt, pushed him forward. At the end of the hallway was a small bedroom, painted with faded stars and rocket ships. In the middle of it sat a little boy, no older than 6, clutching a stuffed bear, tears streaming down his cheeks. The boy's eyes met his. "Where's Mommy?" Miles' throat went dry. He stammered, She's not here, kid." Before he could move, before he could even think, the front door opened. A man's voice shouted, "Honey, I forgot my—" Then a scream, a struggle, a flash of panic, and then the gun went off. Miles didn't even remember pulling the trigger. All he remembered was the sound, the deafening echo that filled the hallway, followed by silence. The man, mid-30s, wearing a police uniform, fell to the floor. Miles dropped the gun and stumbled backward. He wanted to run, to vanish, to unlive the last 10 seconds of his life. But the boy was still there, wide-eyed, shaking. "You hurt Daddy." Miles turned and bolted into the rain, disappearing into the night. The news report said it was an attempted burglary gone wrong. The officer's wife, Emily Rhodes, had been out of town that night, leaving her son, Caleb, with her husband. Miles never turned himself in. He disappeared into construction work, cheap motels, and long stretches of silence. But every year, on the same date, he'd read the story again online, about Officer James Rhodes, about the family he had broken. And then, one morning, as Miles was drinking bitter coffee in a roadside diner, a news broadcast flickered on the TV above the counter. "Community Spotlight, Foster Program faces funding cuts." He looked up. On the screen was a boy, 17, maybe 18, with brown hair, calm eyes, and a familiar name, Caleb Rhodes. Miles dropped his mug. He couldn't explain it, why he drove across 3 counties to find that foster center. He told himself it was guilt, that maybe he could do something good before dying. When he arrived, the director mistook him for a volunteer. He didn't correct her. For weeks, he swept floors, fixed broken window panes, repaired old bicycles. The kids liked him.
They called him Mr. Turner. But the one who never smiled was Caleb. Quiet, withdrawn, always sketching in a small notebook. One evening, Miles approached him. "You draw?" Caleb shrugged. "It's something to do, when the world doesn't make sense. Miles smiled faintly. Yeah, I know that feeling. They grew closer over time. Miles helped Caleb study for his mechanic exams, taught him how to rebuild an engine, how to use his hands to create instead of destroy. Caleb started opening up about how he bounced between foster homes, how he stopped believing in family. And one night, while they were working in the garage, Caleb said something that made Miles' heart stop. "My dad was a cop, died when I was little. They said some junkie broke in and shot him. I never even saw his face." Miles felt his breath hitch. The wrench slipped from his hand and clanged to the floor. Caleb looked at him. "You okay?" Miles forced a nod. "Yeah, just tired, kid." But that night, he didn't sleep. He sat in his truck outside the foster center, staring through the moon through a cracked windshield, trembling as guilt clawed at him like a living thing. It was a Friday afternoon when Caleb found the envelope. Inside were yellowed news clippings, the original police report, a photo of Officer James Rhodes, and a handwritten note. "Caleb, you deserve to know the truth. I was the man who took your father's life. I spent every day since trying to make that right, even if I never can. You became the reason I started living again. If you hate me, I'll understand. Miles Turner." Caleb didn't cry. He just sat there, silent, the words echoing in his skull. That night, Miles was arrested in the parking lot of the foster center. He didn't resist. He looked almost relieved. The courtroom was filled with whispers. The state offered a plea deal, voluntary manslaughter. Caleb testified, not as a victim, but as someone who had seen something change in the man who broke him. "Miles Turner taught me how to fix things, even people." The judge paused before handing down the sentence. He said, "Sometimes redemption comes late, but it's still redemption." Miles was sentenced to 8 years in prison. 8 years later, Miles walked out of prison. Older, grayer, but free. Waiting for him outside was Caleb, now 22 years old, wearing a mechanic's uniform from his own garage. "I figured you need a job, and maybe a family." Miles's eyes welled. He reached out a trembling hand. "You sure about that?" Caleb nodded. "You made a mistake, but you didn't run forever." The two men stood there, underneath the Arizona sun, shadows long on the concrete. And for the first time since that terrible night, Miles didn't feel like a criminal. He felt human. A few years later, Miles helped Caleb open a program for at-risk youth, teaching them mechanics, carpentry, and second chances. One of the first things they hung on the office wall was a framed letter addressed simply, "Forgiveness isn't forgetting what happened. It's choosing to believe that something good can still grow where everything once burned." Underneath was a small plaque that read, "In memory of Officer James Rhodes, a father, a protector, a reason for redemption." This is Shadows of Justice, where crime meets compassion. Subscribe for more emotional true crime and redemption storytelling, where every scar tells a story worth hearing.